Um, okay, so first of all, I'd just like to start by saying just how happy I am to be here and to talk to you all, especially knowing who it is I'm talking to, because everybody here is working in food, and you've obviously all decided that that's the most important place to be and the most important work to do, and I agree with you. So, yeah. What I want to do today is basically look at a problem that we're all facing. It's a problem that runs through public health and our communities and our relationship to the ecology of where we live and of the planet as a whole. So that's a problem. But the only reason I want to talk about the problem is because I think there's a solution. I think there's a very good solution, and it's there with the wild plants that we're here to talk about. So Aristotle said, "Give me a place to stand, and I'll move the world." I've sat and thought about this big problem. And it is one problem, right? The one I've just described, it is one problem. And I'll say what it is, but it's in my title anyway. So I sat thinking about this problem, and it's like there's a big rock, okay? We're going down the road, and there's a big rock. And we can't move forward. How are we going to move that rock? So we can try pushing it and throwing things at it and so on. But there's just this idea that maybe there's one point on that rock that there's a rock. If we had a lever, there's just maybe one point that if we pushed it with the lever, it would just with a little. Okay, so that's what Aristotle was talking about. Give me a place to stand, and I'll move the world. So again, thank you for standing with me in this little space, food, okay? Because I think this place that we stand is that point of leverage to move this rock. In the 60s, the hippies thought they were going to change the world through rock and roll. They didn't quite manage. It's a little while later now, and the world is in a bigger mess now. So, sorry hippies, it's our turn. We're going to change the world through food. Aren't we? Are we going to change the world through food? Yeah. Okay, I think so. And specifically, we're going to change the world through wild plants. Okay, that's what I think. So, do you think so? Not so sure. We're not so sure. Anybody that is sure, are we going to change the world through wild plants? Is that a point? Is that a point of leverage that's going to move it? I think it is, okay? So you'll understand, all right? I've got to take you on a journey. It's through some ideas, and I'm going to talk about evolution and complexity and biological epistemology. Anybody know about that one? So there's going to be a few things you think, why is he telling us about that? But hopefully it'll all come together. Because the thing is, something is broken, right? Something is broken. And I think there's a way to fix it. What's broken? Well, we did a lot of thinking to try and define the problem that we have, and it's this life-giving connection, right? There's a life-giving connection that we, as a species, used to have with land. We, as a species, used to have with each other. We, as a species, used to have between us and species and our physical, material well-being and health, right? There used to be a life-giving connection, and it's broken. And it continues to be more broken with the way things are going, with industrialization and the expansion of technology into every realm of our conscious life and our material experience, right? It's cutting the vital connections as we speak. But if we look at the origins of life, we understand that vital connections are where it all began, and vital connections are where we were born from in our mother's womb. And our early experience of social life with other people was vital connections. So I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain how our origins can be understood in terms of, okay, there's something called complexity theory. And okay, so if you can imagine, if you will, there's a picture of the god Janus, and he's looking back and he's looking forwards. That's what's supposed to be there, right? It has your imagination. It's like a Roman coin. There's a face looking this way, and there's a face looking that way. So that's what we've got to do, isn't it? We've got to look at where we came from, because we were well. Those hunter-gatherers, they bonded with the landscape, and they ate well, and they lived well. And do you know, they worked a lot less than we do every week, and they had time to be together and to develop culture. So if we're looking forward, we need to look backwards. Okay, so that's what's to say about that. So when we look backwards, we're looking at our ancestors. I've just mentioned some of them. Hunter-gatherers, right? And early human origins in Africa, we'd look back to those ancestors, but I want to look a bit further, to beings like this, because those are really, really, really ancient ancestors, you know, and we've got a lot in common with these. That's an amoeba. It's a single-celled one. I think it's actually a bit more sophisticated than the first single-celled ones that came out of the primordial soup that we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just want to say complexity is obviously complex. It's lots and lots and lots of different things connected all together in lots and lots of different ways. And really, the better the quality and quantity of those connections, this is what complexity theory relates, the better the thing that comes out of it, you know. And then you start going back the other way and reducing the number of connections and the number of things. Does that sound familiar? Like monoculture, for example, homogenization of food. The fewer things and the fewer connections, hey, we're going backwards. Okay, so evolution went this way. It got more complex and good things came out of it. And we need to keep going that way and not the other way. So in this primordial soup, first of all, you have the element hydrogen. That's all it was. Then the stars started manufacturing other chemicals. Then the chemicals started bonding together in things called molecules. And then after a while, you had some organic chemicals. They started bonding together. All of a sudden, something that nobody would have predicted happened. And that's what complexity does. You get to this point of so much complexity, all of a sudden, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat, something happens that nobody knew was going to happen. And they call that emergence in complexity theory. In this case, the rabbit that came out of the hat was life. If you'd been there, you wouldn't have said, any minute now, something amazing is going to happen. I know, it's life. You'd have been just as surprised as we are looking back on it. Right? And then a little while later, these living things started having nerve cells to communicate information. And then the nerve cells started communicating with each other, and then there were different kinds of nerve cells, and then they all started connecting in lots of different ways. And another rabbit came out of the hat. It was called consciousness. And all of a sudden, there were beings in the universe that could stand back and look at that and say, hey, isn't it amazing? And think about it, and even think about their thinking about it. And you can go off into a whole realm of layers there, thinking. That's supposed to be what consciousness is. It's consciousness being conscious of itself. Anyway, digressing slightly, the point is, good things emerge when lots of different things connect in lots of different high-quality ways, right? Okay? Good things emerge when lots of different kinds of things connect in lots of different high-quality kind of ways. So we've had life and consciousness, but culture's another one, not a good one. But it's also the very basis of the relationship between living beings and their surroundings. That's called lots of different things connecting in lots of different ways. That's an ecosystem. And so you have just the life on Earth, which there's the thing called Gaia theory, which is suggested the idea that life on Earth is like one thing, one complex being. And the good thing that emerges is that everything flourishes, everything thrives. That's the good thing that emerges. Whereas when we point the other way, we start severing the links of life, and nothing thrives, nothing prospers. Okay, so I just want to look at some examples of how, no, just not how, but examples of the two important parts of this complexity business. Just have a drink of water. Okay, so the two important parts are obviously connections and interfaces. So the point of one thing connecting to another has like an interface. And if you think about it, that's kind of a metaphor, the word interface, because it relates to the fact that my face looking at your face, and there's a connection there. I can see if you're smiling or frowning, and then I think, oh, he doesn't like what I said, and all that kind of thing. So we respond to one another through this interface. And that's a very good metaphor. So connections first, right? So here we've got some. And I've also obviously chosen things that are quite eye-catching here. So this one, I have to say, that looks to me like a placenta. Don't you agree? But it isn't. That's an aerial map of an area of Siberia. And here you have all these rivers running down to the sea. So that's a vital connection, obviously, from the sky down to the land, running down through pride and water to all of this landscape and everything way back here that you can't see. And actually, believe it or not, it's also providing nutrition to the sea. So the sea is full of wonderful, rich chemical soup, and that's because over billions and millions of years, stuff is being washed down, right down from here, down these tributaries and out to sea. So the sea's full of the chemistry of life. I'll come back to that later. Here we've got the blood supply going to your brain. Those kind of rivers of blood there. And that's obviously taking stuff. You'll see, I'm going to try and work this theme in a minute. It's called knowledge as participation. And so your body is participating in your surroundings like this. Oxygen's coming in, and then it's going whoosh, like that. But also food is coming in. That's a wonderful thing. When we eat wild plants, we're participating in our surroundings by gathering, and then they participate in us because now we have molecules from the ground there. Yesterday is part of me. So that's also happening with the blood, the nutrients coming through that have been outside, and now they're inside, and now they're part of me. So these connections mix us up. Now what was out there is in here. And we're part of the land. These are neurons firing, the little lights there, brain cells firing and signals. Obviously, this is a bit fanciful. It's supposed to be lungs, right? Portrayed as a tree, but I just liked that one. I couldn't resist it. And this one is especially beautiful. It's a young, I think that's a cedar tree. But what you're seeing here is the roots and the mycorrhizal fungi. So again, there's this thing of inside and outside, because these fungi, there's the mycelium of the fungi. They've become one. You'll see the detail in a minute with the roots. And they're helping to feed this tree and draw nutrients in from the soil. And the tree is also feeding the fungi. So that's a lot of connections going on there between both the fungi and the roots, and also the fungi, the roots, and the soil. Okay, and that's a conversation. So these, you could say that represents emotional bonds, words, thoughts flowing one to the other. It's the literal interface again. So now moving on to the interfaces. So those are all connections. This is neurons firing, chemistry going through. So there's the junction between one and the other, and there's a space in between, but they're joined by that space in between. The two neurons firing neurotransmitter chemicals. That's just another way of saying the same thing. This one is the detail of the mycorrhizal fungi in the root. I'm not saying it's the same root, but this is a diagram. And we can't really get up close enough, but suffice it to say, those squiggles that start on the outside and work their way inside, that is mycorrhizal mycelium getting down into the roots. So it's not just I'm on the outside and you're on the outside, okay? Our thoughts intermingle, our emotions intermingle. There's a bit the same as what I was saying just now about air. You breathe it in and it's... So you can't tell where one ends and the other begins, is the point. They're one in that sense. They're distinct, but they're one. So the interface is something that mixes two things together. And it's shared life, right? So this is the nature of vital connection, okay? Machines might not work like this. Living things do. They're intermingled, they're mixed, they're one. And that's another description of the same thing, okay? Those are mycorrhizal strands of mycelium on the outside, but the grayish bit on the inside, that's the fungus inside the root. And there's the detail of your lungs. You can see there's the interface of the space in the middle is air. So the outside's on the inside. The atmosphere of the air is still on the inside of you in those chambers. And then it's exchanging gases into the blood vessel at the bottom there. So that's another interface, mixing air and blood. And of course, there's the one that we get the metaphor from again. Babies learn to be human because mothers respond to the expressions in their faces by mirroring back. Did you know that a psychopath is someone that can't read faces? That's very important. We're going to come back to that. A psychopath has a bit of his brain that doesn't work called the amygdala. So it might be causing somebody to be frightened or feel pain. But the look on their face, you can't understand it. Can't understand what that weird expression is. So they're not able to respond. So those emotions on the inside of that person are not able to mix with the emotions of the psychopath. So he just keeps moving forward like a machine and mows the other person down, literally or hypothetically. But in this space, we learn not to do that. We learn to be mixed with the people around us and to respond, and they shape us and we shape them. And that's how we've come to be human. And here, that's a graphic to describe a conversation, which I quite like. It's like the one speaking is bending the other one's ear. And that's, of course, what we do, provided we're speaking well and listening well. We're kind of shaping one another when we talk, aren't we? We're not just informing one another. I hope a good conversation would both be changed. And lots of conversations with the same person over time, that would mean people are shaping each other, and the thoughts in me are in you and shaping you, and vice versa. So that's a good thing about being human, is we can talk. And you know that mutual shaping thing? That's what happens in ecosystems. Did you know that Darwin said this thing about survival of the fittest? And what did he say? There's this thing about adaptation as well. So survival of the fittest does not mean I'm the toughest and the hardest and I can go harder and faster and longer than you. It doesn't mean that. It means I fit. I fit. It means there's a little shape, and after a little while of jiggling backwards and forwards, I fit that shape. Okay? So ecological fitness is a good fit, but here's the thing, it's a two-way process. That original Darwin thing is much more focused on, I change to fit, but it's not. Both bits fit. So early on in the history of our planet, certain species started producing a toxic gas that killed most of life on Earth. It was called oxygen. All of a sudden, things that liked oxygen were able to come through, and guess what? That created space for us, because we quite like oxygen, don't we? But the point there is that the biology massively changed the sort of chemical makeup of the atmosphere. So that's a two-way shaping. And it's always like that with life. with a vital connection, that's always a two-way flow. If I relate to you, you change me, I change you. If we get on, then the longer that carries on, the better we fit. And so, I'm ready to kind of tell you about biological epistemology now. You ready? Biological epistemology? I like saying that. It's got a sort of ring to it. I'll say it again. Biological epistemology. Did you know... sorry, I'm not explaining my terms. Epistemology is... it's a theory of knowledge. All right? So it's like, if you're talking about, hey, I know this and I know that, what do you mean by that? And then you start asking questions like, well, how do I know? How do I know? If I know something, how do I do that? How do I do that thing called knowing? Well, the way we start talking about biological epistemology is to say, this guy knows a bunch of stuff. Okay? Because the definition of biological epistemology, of biological knowledge, is it's just the ability to get what you need from the place where you live. That's it. That's it. To get what you need. But doing that is being this. Because I'm a key that knows how to unlock what's here. Not there, because I'm not there. I'm here. So I need to know how to get what I need here. So how do I do that? Well, yesterday I picked a dandelion. That was good. I couldn't have done that if, number one, I hadn't paid attention at some point. I needed to pay attention. I needed to look around and notice something. And then when I noticed something, I needed to tune in and find out, can you eat it? Well, now I know that, so I can eat dandelions. That's good knowledge. Oh, where is he? Come back, Mr. Amoeba. There he is. So this guy knows how to do that. He gets everything he needs. He never has to go to the supermarket. He never has to drive to somewhere else. Doesn't need to order anything online. He just gets what he needs from just there and there and there. He might have to move over there a little bit sometimes, but he basically gets what he needs. So that's knowledge. So now, okay, see what we got next. Okay, I might leave that. Yeah, no, maybe not. Okay, so I want to quickly talk about engineering, because all of this stuff, I'm going to be sort of saying bad things about machines in a minute, and a little bit critiquing technology, yeah? So I started to think maybe I didn't like engineers, and I didn't like engineering for that reason. So I asked my friend, because I had to talk to some engineers, and I needed to decide. I had to give a talk to them. I needed to decide, do I like engineers? Can I say something useful to some engineers? So I asked my friend, who's a classical scholar, for some etymology on engineering. So this is where it comes from. And I thought, I can work with this. So it comes from two words. One is ingenium, the nature or character of someone or of a place, also talent or cleverness. So, okay, this is all going to be about knowledge for a little while now. What is knowledge? So we've already said knowledge is a fit. It's a fit between a place and a species, or between a person and a person. Although I haven't really developed that point yet. We've also said that knowledge is the ability to get what you need. So that, if you think about it, is a flow. So we got an interface between the amoeba and its surroundings, but we've got various kinds of flow, and we saw some of the flows that we've got with the lungs and the blood, and then we saw some of the flows that we've got with the land coming down from the hills into the sea, right? And we've said that it's a two-way flow to get that thing to fit. Well, what about this, right? If ingenium is the nature or character of someone or a place, what about if we look at the nature or character of someone and then the nature or character of a place? An engineer ultimately should stop making things out of metal like cars. He should set his mind. Do you understand, right? So this is like, that's what an engineer would do. They would get to that essence. What's this really about? What are you really about? So how can we get a fit between that and this? An engineer would think about that as a design problem. So I'm thinking about this as a design problem. How do we make our species fit the ecosystem of the planet? Well, we used to, didn't we? Our ancestor, the amoeba, he's done a good job of fitting. He's not screwing things up. He's not creating global warming and ruining the soil. He's got a good fit. He's prospering. And we used to. I'll get more detail on that in a minute, but we used to, if we just start from there. And we don't now, so we need to redesign it. We really need to get to the essence of the place, the planet, and the essence of us, and say, unlike some people, I don't think humans are a cancer. There's too many of us, people say, and maybe they're secretly wishing there's going to be a very big AIDS epidemic and wipe us out, and that'll solve the problem. I don't think we can think like that. I think we have to like our species. So we start like this and say, well, what is the essence of humans? What is the essence of this planet? And how do we fit? Well, we don't, so how do we get to the essence and find that fit? What's the thing that's going to make them fit? It's knowledge. Okay? I'm going to keep reworking this. Hopefully it will slot in and make sense by the end of it. That is the vital connection, knowledge. That is the thing that needs to be restored. But I ain't talking about books. I'm not talking about theories. I'm talking about how you do it. How do you fit your friends? How do you fit your partner? How does anything fit? We need to look at that relationship where the inside becomes outside. And I know you because I participate with you. I know you because there's varying degrees of intimacy between you and I. I didn't learn about you. I didn't read your Facebook profile. I know you or not. But if we're going to fit, I need to know you. So that's a vital connection. What does it have as a quality? It has depth. It has intimacy. It has practical involvement. It has exchange of substance. It's transformational. I change, you change. So we change, the planet changes if we make these adjustments. And another point which I'm going to get to then, but I'm just going to be talking about food, after I've given this very long background. At the end, the vital connection leads to satisfaction. Okay? You actually feel good when you're vitally connected. All this other shit doesn't make you feel good. Right? It sucks the life out of you. Even though you want it so bad in some cases, it sucks the life out of you. Right? We're addicted to all kinds of things. But they don't satisfy. Vital connection satisfies. So the point is, we can find this, we can engineer this, and guess what? Like at the beginning, lots of connections between lots of things, good quality connections, gives rise to something wonderful. Well, the other root word for engineering is ingeno, birth. So I don't think we need to throw technology out, I've decided. I was really struggling with that. The machines are causing such a problem. You know, we're all on our phones, and every time we go anywhere, we're spitting CO2 out and causing a big problem, but we can't live without it. Sounds like addiction to me. So I've been thinking, like, yeah, but it can't per se be wrong. And I think this is the key. We need to re-engineer engineering and say, now look, that basic thing of getting to the heart of the matter about one thing and the other thing, you make a fit here. So we're going to also touch briefly on why technology has gone the way it's gone. But now we're going to have some biblical epistemology. It's a theory of knowledge from the good book. All right? So actually, it's two theories of knowledge. I'll quickly touch on this. Didn't expect to see that, did you? Okay, so there's two theories of knowledge. So just before this, everything's about to break down. They're about to sever the bond here. That vital connection is like a bond. It's a bond between people and land. It's a bond between people and people. It's a bond between species. They're about to sever it. Why is that? Well, just before this picture, you have something called original synergy. Original synergy. Okay? All was well, all was one. They were together in the garden, not thinking too much, just being there. Life was aflow. It's a story, right? But follow me in the story. All of a sudden, there's this suggestion that you can eat from this tree. It's called the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So they knew stuff just then. They were participating. They were in this flow. They were one, yeah? Now, there's the temptation, and he's weighing it up. She's going, go on then, because she's already eaten it. All right? He's weighing it up. See, the suggestion now is you could know about it. Wouldn't that be more convenient? None of this ishy, squishy relationship stuff. I can just stand back and know about it, and then I can order something online. Wait for the postman to bring it. And I don't have to talk to you if I don't want to, because I don't feel like it. Whereas if I didn't do that, I might have to have a chat with you because you're going to give me the eggs from your garden and, I've got to have a relationship and, They're about to know about it. This is the birth, in this story. Suddenly people stand outside. The story says afterwards they knew they were naked. They didn't know that before because they never stood outside themselves and thought about themselves subjectively. Okay, so that's the roots of a different kind of knowledge. But let's go back to the synergy one. Okay? Physical intimacy is described like this in this story. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived a son. Ingenium, ingenium. When we're one, something's born. Okay? So that's biblical epistemology. Adam knew his wife. So now I'm going to talk about these machines and what the problem is. Okay, the problem with that is it's out of context, or really it's out of your head, so it's out of context. So I thought objectively about the universe, and I thought about these components and these laws of mechanics, which I extracted because I stood outside, and I invented this machine. Obviously I didn't, but someone invented this machine. And the thing about machines is they're always out of context because they're out of your head. They're an idea about a relationship with some things, which will mean I can construct a device that always does this if I put that in. I put this in, it does this, and it puts that out. Yeah, so you have a simple input, simple operation, simple output. And we act like that's fine. We can do it out of context, get the same guaranteed result every time. I can go from A to B, as long as I put fuel in, bit of water, air into the carburetors, and put my foot down. I will get from A to B. It's ever so reliable. Works every time, unless the system breaks down, and then we just take it to a mechanic. But you can't do things out of context. That's an illusion. Nothing's out of context. The car's there. It is actually there. And all the planes and cars, they're where they are. They're not in this vacuum with no relationship to anything else. They have a relationship. They're psychopaths because they can't read the signs. They can't see the pained expression on the face of the biosphere going, what, more CO2? I've got enough already, thank you. They're like, my amygdala's broken. I come out of the head of a scientist and a mechanic. I don't understand those signs. There's no feedback mechanism. So we just carry on driving from A to B and flying, and there is a feedback mechanism. We all know about global warming, but somehow or another, we're psychopaths, and we're still just not responding to that feedback mechanism. So that's machines. Now, it don't have to be like that. There's a little thing called ergonomics, which is supposed to design machines around the user, right? That's supposed to get feedback mechanisms in. So now we have user-friendly things. The thing that you have to hold your hand in your hand is more hand-shaped, right? Or the thing you move a lot is designed not to mess your elbow out. That's ergonomics. Well, we need planetary ergonomics. That's how we're going to fix technology. We're going to go back to ingenio essence of the place, essence of the species, we're going to see how to make that fit, how we're going to do that ergonomics, we're going to know things. So we've got to get these feedback loops in. So yeah, I'm getting there, folks. Wild plants is how we're going to do it. Just in case you're wondering. Okay, so this is a little scribble I did, and then my daughter scribbled on it as well, so I felt obliged to include it in the program. So you can see what I'm trying to say here. There's the earth, is like a placenta. There's a satisfied baby, and all these vital connections are going on. Biocultural knowledge, food traditions, and the communities are like the baby too, connected to the earth through these things. And that's where we were. That's where we want to be. I'm not saying nobody's there now. We want to celebrate the connections that are there, right? Yesterday we went to a cider factory, which is just there in the sort of under the armpit of a mountain, and it's there, and that's where it's got to be because that's the only place we can make cider because it's cool there. I thought that was so cool that the cider factories, do you know what I mean? That's a response, isn't it? That's like we're going to work with the genius of the place for the genius of the apples and the genius of the cider maker. And it was a bit cold, though. That's my only criticism. I was cold, so I needed to adapt with feedback and wear a jacket next time. But so yeah, do you know what? This root goes down more than 4 feet into the ground. It's a dandelion. Dandelions know how to dig deep into the earth. Well, we need to be like that. We used to be like that. That's what our biocultural knowledge used to do, can do now. But they're getting minerals. They're like miners. They're not like us. They don't dig a hole and destroy the landscape to get what they need. They get what they need from the place where they live. And they bring it up, all the minerals up there, but then they share it around. So when they decay, it's there in the topsoil now, the minerals from down there. And that's the thing about ecology. There's multiple benefits to everything. Nothing does one thing for one thing. It's all a wonderful process of exchange, of flow and interface. Multiple benefits for multiple species. We know that our monocultures are, I'm going to say this, no benefits to no species, really. Because that great big pile of wheat meant we had to destroy everything in the field. We killed the bacteria, we killed the mycorrhizal fungi, we killed the insects, no birds lived there, no lizards. Nothing, just wheat. At the end of the day, we have a great big pile of wheat. Well, that's not benefiting us either because it's just one thing. We used to eat many things, we need to eat many things. Now we're just going for energy from wheat. But this biocultural knowledge is still rooted and grounded in some corners of the earth. This is a lady in the Northern Territory in Australia. She's digging up a long yam. There used to be a wooden stick. Now they use crowbars. It's pretty cool. But she's dug that up from a hole. It grows in the same place that it's grown for thousands of years. And I went on a journey one day. This lady's called Molly. She's a wonderful Aboriginal elder. And they've been going to this same place for thousands of years. They've been passing on the knowledge of where it is, of what it is, how to tend it to make sure it's still there next year, etc., etc. But we, these days, we just dig down into the soil for oil to fund those vast monocultures of energy crops. And you know, with the world's major food crops, of the 5 billion tons, hang on, is it billions or millions? Wait a minute. Yeah, billions. 5 billion tons of food produced every year by the world's major food crops. 2 billion are sugar, coming from sugar cane, from sugar beet, and from maize. 2 billion. Of course, we really need all that sugar. That's good use of land, isn't it? Most of the rest of the other 3 billion are high GI carbs, Also energy crops. So we're investing in one thing. Remember, it's going away from complexity. It's not diversity. It's not forging vital connection. But that's our food system in a nutshell. I know that's not all there is to it, but this is the bulk of it. There's nothing there that's not an energy crop. Nothing there. It's one thing. But if you go back, the early agriculturalists, this is what this is supposed to depict, they fostered biodiversity. Their way of subsistence farming fostered biodiversity. In England, or in Great Britain rather, there was more biodiversity following the first Neolithic settlers, and that increased right up until the beginning of the 18th century with the complexity of the farming regime and different habitats created. More biodiversity because people were there. So we're not inherently a cancer, right? We can enhance biodiversity. Also, hunter-gatherers, especially in Australia, the biodiversity and biomass of Australia massively increased as a result of the highly sophisticated cultural knowledge system that crossed the entire continent and managed every square inch of the land. I'm afraid, I end up contradicting people when they say that there's bits of Australia that no one set foot on. That's really very, very untrue. Every bit of Australia not only had feet set on it, but it was actively managed for thousands of years by the most sophisticated hunter-gatherer culture that's ever existed on Earth, uninterrupted for possibly as long as 70,000 years. So they really got the hang of that knowledge, that vital connection with land there. And we badly need to kind of find people to talk to, like Molly there, before that little flame gets snuffed out, because the problem is lots of those cultures are so broken, the knowledge is not being passed down. They're so broken by colonialism, and the trauma that's meant that the knowledge is not passed down in the generations. But anyway, more biomass, more biodiversity because people were there. And in Australia, they used a lot of fire. They burnt off land. This grass is there because they burnt it off. It provides grazing for the kangaroos, but the fire also enables them to hunt the kangaroos. It's an incredibly sophisticated system, far more sophisticated than anything agriculture has ever produced, because it works with and responds to wild species rather than saying, I'm going to pull you out of context and make you do what I want here, which is a little bit psychopathic, really, if you think about it. Try doing that to somebody else, that would be called slavery or some kind of abuse, right? And okay, hunter-gatherer people played distinctive roles as super generalist and highly omnivorous consumers closely connected to other species. In other words, we were like cod. This big food web study there tried to look at the relationships between people and all the other species, and what they realized was there'd be lots of this, so we'd eat it until there wasn't quite so much, and then we'd eat that, in summary. And that's what cod do. Okay? If we did that with planetary feedback mechanisms, now we could eat the wild heavily. Don't panic, those of you that think we're going to destroy and make species go out of extinct, right? Because foragers want feedback mechanisms. They might be a bit insensitive to them now, but if you see something decline, you've been foraging, you're really pissed off about that, very sad, upset, and you want to fix it. So that's like how to not be a psychopath. Be a forager. Even if you do cause a problem to the population of a plant, you will respond to it. And if we did that planetary-wise, so that we had face recognition stuff, planetary-wise, we could sort this out, because there's a superabundance out there. Wild nature is superabundant. There's lots of food, and it's all being exchanged in these wonderful, complex ways. We just need to know how to tap into that without sabotaging it. And that's called not being a psychopath. Is the complexity of the hunter-gatherer diet, all the lots of different things. Hey, everybody. I'm going to show you a picture of a plant now. So the point is, all of those different kinds of species, all super nutritious, but we ate lots of different kinds of all the different kinds, and every year we'd have eaten thousands of different species, and they've all got different micronutrients and profiles, and it all works together, lots of different connections between lots of different things, and lots of different high-quality connections between. That's called emergence of a relationship between us and the biosphere, because we get what we need from the place where we live. That means we need to respond to all of those. Hey? We've got our eye on all of these balls, not just will the wheat crop fail. We're looking at all of these things. We're responding. We're responding. We're responding. And like plants are going to give us the best there is. When we cultivate, we mostly impoverish plants, nutritionally speaking, and flavor speaking. Might be a bit intense, we'll come to that in a minute, but there's vitamin A and C and omega-3 and calcium. So the vital connection, so I just need to elaborate the knowledge thing again now. Did you know animals know what to eat, right? Animals know exactly what to eat. There's a great big study that's been elaborating this for years with this guy called Provenzo. I strongly suggest you look him up. He's one of the most important people working in food at the moment. So you may think that we've forgotten. Try being pregnant. I'm not going to have that opportunity, unfortunately, but pregnant ladies know what to eat, yeah? The body says, I must have this, and they'll go and look for it and eat it now. Right? Animals grazing on wild land. I call these wild land-free grazers, right? If the plants are there and it's not been agriculturalized, they will go to exactly the plant they need, and they'll eat it when they need it, right? And the thing is, the body gives feedback. If you eat something that's good for you, imagine you need it in your knees, you eat that a few times because you're exposed to it, you will have an appetite for that. And that's the important thing. Your appetite is meant to tell you what you need. It's not supposed to lead you running after something that you are going to regret later. So, here's the situation. That knowledge gets passed on biologically. So mothers in the womb pass on chemicals through the placenta to the baby, something hard to metabolize, the mother will eat, and then the baby will learn to metabolize it while still in the womb, and then it comes out, it will graze on that difficult-to-eat plant. The one over here where mother can metabolize, but she's not been on land where that plant grows, the baby will come out and not be able to metabolize it. It can try it, but it's going to struggle. So that's pre-womb, pre-birth biological knowledge. I know how to interact with that thing. My body can metabolize it. When the baby's born, gut bacteria get passed on to the infant. And that enables the baby, again, to digest what it's going to eat, because it's the same stuff as a mother eats. And then thirdly, the breast milk will also provide more gut bacteria and the chemistry of what the mother's eating. So all of this is biologically setting up a vital connection between the baby and the land. Okay? Unfortunately, the same is true where a mother has an industrial food diet. She will pass on gut bacteria that cause the baby to want to eat rubbish, and same with the breast milk. So that's not so good. That's a vital disconnection, and it's more like a chain than a bond, right? So that maternal thing is helping the child bond with land through those kind of mechanisms. But bad gut bacteria and an industrial food diet is like a chain. It's like an addiction. Okay, and there's some tricks that they use for that. The industrial food system. So they put umami chemicals in potato crisps, for example. Now, protein is signaled by the presence of umami. If you taste something umami, it's because the body links it with protein, says, I want that, give me some. And then you crave more, which, of course, if you're eating potato chips, I am going to run over, unless you're going to throw me off the stage. I've got just like 5 minutes here. So you crave this, but you ain't going to get no satisfaction. You just want more. Your gut has released protease to digest it. But there's no protein coming because that's not got hardly any protein in it, so you just keep eating and eating and eating and eating and eating. If you get enough, your gut signals satisfaction, right? So we're breaking that vital connection between what we want and what we need because flavor chemicals are lying to us. The same is true of artificial sweeteners, right? They tell your body you're going to get some sugar and you don't. That's also really messed up. It's possibly worse than eating sugar, artificial sweeteners, for that reason, okay? And then another thing that the industrial food system is doing is homogenization. Orange juice normally has a chemical called limonin in it. It's an anti-cancer compound. That's good, isn't it? Let's drink more orange juice. Anti-cancer, fantastic. It's also a bit bitter. So the orange juice guys have now found the technology to take it out. So you're going to drink more orange juice and drink more sugar. And it's not going to have anti-cancer properties. That's horrible, isn't it? There's a vital connection between an orange and you that's been severed. And then you can have a meal made of maize, right? Beef fed on maize, drink made of maize syrup, fries made from maize, what a disaster. But if we want to restore that vital connection, there's foods that we can eat, there's things we can do. I kind of like to think of this seaweed here. It's a bit like an umbilical cord. Because you know all of that stuff flowing down to the oceans, what I said earlier. You know the soil is being impoverished. The vegetables now have far less nutrients because they've been selectively bred and are grown on crap soil, selectively bred to have fewer nutrients but better qualities for marketing purposes. More sweet, better shelf life, etc., bigger, fatter, tastelesser. But this stuff grows in the ocean, which is a lot like the womb. Amniotic fluid all around full of nutrients. The seaweed sucks it up and is like kind of placenta and umbilical cord in one. I'm going to grab a bunch full of that and eat it because it's probably the most nutritious plant on the face of the earth. Yeah? So you can add that to your food, and it does stuff. So what we need is plants. What we need is a vital connection with plants because they're full of flavor and full of nutrients, and it's the same thing. A lot of these bitter compounds that we struggle with, a lot of the flavor compounds that are a bit intense in wild plants, they're food. They're not just, right, we're not hedonists. If I enjoy my food, I'm not a hedonist. I'm not snorting cocaine because I eat delicious food, right? I want it because I need it. That's my body saying, you need this stuff, you will thrive, you will flourish. And I say, thank you very much. But I'm trying to restore the vital connection because I'm trying to be like that wild land free grazing animal and eat stuff that's good for me. And first time round, it might taste horrible, right? It might taste disgusting. That's too bitter, that's too strong, that's too fibrous. But we need the flavor, we need the fiber. That's the vital connection. It's in the wild plants. That's how we get back. This is a route back, is what I've been trying to say. I promised I'd tell you that. Yeah? I'm telling you. We can get back to that vital connection, starting with eating wild plants, knowing them, and eating them. Okay? So dietary fiber, it makes stuff pass slowly through your gut. Even high GI carbs, right? They'll pass slowly through your gut because you ate this stuff. It's got soluble fiber in it. And a bunch of overweight guys were just given toast and eggs to eat every morning with a little bit of this seaweed in, and they lost weight just because it takes longer to go through your gut, and they didn't get hungry again very quickly. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I eat lots of this every day. I've got a bag full of it, which I carry everywhere. Lastly, on this thing, so food that you want, this bowl of soup with chili in it, people eat less. So food that you want is food that satisfies because it's more tasty. Chili's tasty. It's a flavor thing that makes your body go, that your body wants, and when you get it, your body goes, thank you, I'm satisfied. So people who ate the soup with the chili ate less. People who ate soup without the chili ate more. Another experiment, they put 2 meals in front of you. The one that's your favorite food and the one that's bland food. Okay, which one do you think people ate more of? Put your hands up if you think people ate more of their favorite food. Who thinks people ate more of their favorite food? I think you guys are one step ahead of me here. You know the right answer. So they ate less of their favorite food. Why is that? Because appetite is your body saying, give me food-based flavor chemicals, please. Give me food-based nutrients. When you eat your favorite food, it's because it's tasty, and all of those flavors come from plants, ultimately, even if it's meat. So then you don't need so much because that little thing in your gut triggers to your brain, I'm satisfied now. So what you want is what you need. I'm really nearly done. So listen, guys. There's 2 things we need to be if we're working in food. We need to be mothers and tribal elders. I want to talk to you about that. What does a mother want to do? She just wants to nourish, right? So I really appreciate everyone that's trying to do incredible food and hit this year's headlines with your innovation and creativity. That's great, guys, but it's just a means to an end. All right? Don't get carried away with that. You're just trying to nourish people. Just remember that. And then we can be like mothers, and we can nurture the bond with our food, the bond between people and places and land and so on. And then, don't clap yet, I'm nearly done. And this lady's a tribal elder working in the States, in California. She's getting the knowledge about acorns back online. She's working with the traditional ways of using acorns. She's restoring traditional knowledge. We need to be like that, everything we're doing. To do that, one of the first things we need to do is get value on it. So gastronomy, thank you very much, because you're putting value on these little herbs here, which are despised and considered like weeds, and people drag them out of their garden and say, get out of here, and throw them on a compost bin. That stuff's more valuable than the plants you're trying to grow. And the chefs have told us how valuable it is. So thank you very much, chefs. You're restoring vital connection. Okay, and then we'll get back to being healthy and sound and strong like these guys, because in wildness is the preservation of the world. Thank you.